Hi, and welcome to Impact TV again. We're so excited that you guys are joining us, talking a little bit more about marriage today.
Yay!
Developing a strong marriage. And we're talking from the perspective of our marriage, what we've learned, what we're currently learning, what we still need to learn.
Absolutely. What we're developing in.
Yeah.
What we're growing in.
14 years.
14 years, and really that's I think if we even have that mentality, is that this is constantly developing. We're never going to arrive where I'm the best husband, although I am.
Right, of course, yeah.
For you, I'm the best husband that there could ever be. Like, that's just crazy talk. We're developing and we're growing into the people that God has called us to be for each other.
Yes, exactly.
And so that's what we're learning and growing. So.
I like that actually, because then it's not, well, I went to a marriage conference 5 years ago, or I did pre-marriage counseling.
Right.
Like, marriage shifts and grows in every season,
It does.
Right? Like, we're in the season of young kids.
Yeah.
Our marriage, I mean, probably one of the hardest times of it was when we added our firstborn to the family. The firstborn was the non-sleeper.
Yeah.
So learning how to do marriage in exhaustion and how to do marriage in, suddenly we've got this little person that we're making decisions about and we see differently.
Yeah. And then you had second one.
Yeah, and then the third
and then a third, and then the fourth, and then it's like still learning and growing in marriage. Yeah, so it's always growing, and like you said, that there's always moving parts to it, and different seasons, of course, right? So we're not speaking to the future season; we're speaking in the season that we currently are in at this moment,
right?
And knowing, of course, some of these practical things we're laying out will be beneficial for those that are, in any kind of season you're in. These are just helpful tools, but yeah, that's what we're going to be stepping into. So the first one, I'll mention it here right now. It's that we give each other space to be ourselves.
Yes.
And I love that. And that's something that, we've been doing this for a couple of years, but I think every time that we've allowed room, I'm always noting in my own head how thankful and grateful I am that you make that room for me. And maybe we'll give a couple examples, but why don't you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I think maybe you should do this one. Giving ourselves space, or each other space, to be who we are, or space to have time for our passions or pursuits, or rest, recreation, those kind of things.
Yeah,
right?
Like one thing that I'm so grateful for that you do, or that Jamie does for me, is there'll be times like, hey man, there's a couple of guys are wanting to go golfing or something, and is it work? Does that work that I just hit up? And her response is not like, oh my goodness, again? You got to golf again? Oh, that's your response has been, please go. Like, that would be so good for you. And hearing that response it takes any kind of burden off, but also just this whole responsibility of oh man, I'm leaving my wife at home with 4 little kids. Is that okay? And when you just say, yeah, absolutely go. And then when I'm there, I don't have to pay the price later.
Yes,
where it's oh my goodness.
Point.
So you went golfing. So and here you have to do this. The kids this is what happened with the kids. Diapers exploded everywhere. And now you got to clean. There's none of that. And I'm so grateful.
But I think we have learned that over the years.
Yes,
right? Because
absolutely.
There were probably seasons where we would do that and realize I think one time you had mentioned well, why did I even go?
Right.
And then that really helped me see, he needs recreation time.
Yeah.
You need time to rest and refresh with your friends, and so do I.
Yep.
And so in our marriage, we've learned how to put that in practice where we're not fighting for time. Mm-hmm. We're more so looking at this week, we go week by week in the season we're in, what do you need? What do you need?
Yep.
What in terms of time, in terms of who's got the kids here and there.
Yeah.
And
encouraging
really
each other in it. That's what I love about us too. We encourage each other to take that time.
Right. Yeah, that's really important. Another thing in terms of giving each other space to be ourselves has been in our needs, and that again it's always a growth a growth area. Mm-hmm. One thing we've been putting into practice is being able to verbalize our needs more and then share them with the other person. So, for example, there might be times where I'm just feeling like I'm working through something a little bit vulnerable, or I'm working through an insecurity or something, and I'll say to Joel, I need you to be gentle with me today, or I need you to be gentle with me this week, or I feel like I've given all of myself to the kids and I need some time.
Yep.
And so I think just being able to share
Identify.
our needs
Yep.
and identify,
Yep.
because I know there was seasons of our marriage where I just assumed that you knew my needs, and that never ever works.
Right.
Assuming
Yeah.
anything, especially in a marriage, right?
Yeah,
I can't
totally.
assume that you know I'm feeling vulnerable
Yep.
and that you should be gentler with
Yeah.
me, right? And
Yep.
so it's kind of the onus is on me or the onus is on you to say, hey, this is kind of where my needs are at right now, and asking respectfully.
Because on the other hand, not having that, it just creates chaos. It creates frustration, tension.
Creates resentment too,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You start resenting the other spouse, like,
Totally.
well, you didn't give me the time I need. Well, did you ask?
Right. No, that's true. And I know for on this side too, like, James, I'm just a little bit like in my head, I'm just overwhelmed. Lots of thoughts are going on, like lots on my plate, it feels like. And you'll even sometimes even encourage, why don't you just go to the gym or something? Go have a quick workout or whatever.
Yeah.
Just get your head out of this thing. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, I'll go do that. So it's like, not only am I, hey, like, this is what I'm working through, then you're also like, hey, why don't you go do this for a bit? Like take an hour and just go
Here's
play.
some ideas.
I kind of miss, maybe, I don't know how to quite say that, but it was like, Jamie would sometimes say to the kids, okay, go play. And sometimes I take on that same, instruction as well. Go play. Okay, I'm out. I'm gonna go to the gym. I'll see you later. So, but no, it's always
Yeah.
like, it's always good to just encourage that as well. So not only is it identifying what's going on, but then also releasing someone or releasing the other person to go, hey, what do you need? You need some time alone, maybe a walk or just alone time? Please go do that.
Yeah. And actually, you used this quote with me the other day, and it's really good. It's not a power struggle. It should be a power union.
Yeah.
So we're not fighting each other for time. Well, I
No.
get this, and you took this time last week.
Right.
Like it shouldn't be a power struggle
No,
between us.
we're on
It
the
should
same
be,
team.
yeah, out of unity, out of being one.
Yeah.
Like, hey, what do you need this week, kind of thing.
I mean, we use that analogy a lot in our marriage and with our family. We always talk about team.
Yeah.
I know from maybe our sporting background, but it's always team. Our family is a team,
Mm-hmm.
but more importantly, you and I are a team. And so when you're at your best, then our family's at the best. And so we want to work that out for each other. So
Yeah.
sometimes if I need a timeout, I need a timeout.
Yeah.
I kind of got to go.
Self-imposed timeout.
Self-imposed timeout.
I
am
give
giving
myself-
myself, I'm giving myself a good hour timeout. I got to think about my actions here. Timeout, I'm out.
And I usually need to take my time out at a coffee shop. It just
Yes,
really
of
helps
course.
me.
That's very true.
That's good. So then the next thing we are going to talk about is learning and respecting our differences.
Yeah.
And we don't want to sit here and talk about the differences between men and women because honestly, it's not black and white.
Right.
You know what I mean? When some people say, well, men are like this and women are like this.
Not
It's not
always.
always so.
No, that's
And
true.
so you have to find out in your marriage how your husband is geared, how your wife is geared.
Yep.
And then respect the differences.
Yep.
Right. And that's probably the learning curve in every marriage.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
Is respecting the
Yeah.
other person when they see literally the opposite way of you.
Right. Yeah.
But we've really learned it's actually a strength. It's a strength that Joel sees different than me because then he's seeing the other side of the mountain.
Right.
Right. And then between the two of us, we should be getting a full
A good
picture.
scope. Yeah, exactly. No, that's very true. So there's the male and female, like just out of that, but then there's also personality differences. And of course,
Majorly.
majorly respecting those differences because, yeah, you and I are very different in our personalities, yet there's some similarities, but just when the differences are there, not to like condemn or make fun of or
Yeah.
like criticize the differences we have because you don't see the way I see things. Yeah, like, can you even see? Like, none of that is helpful, especially if there's a little disagreement or there's like, hey, I'm not quite seeing what you're seeing there. So of course that's again a learning area for us that we're growing in, but it's a major tool that we can
Yeah.
go into. But it's also how we see things. We see things from different angles.
Yeah.
Like, and we have a couple examples here. Like, I know for one thing, I know myself in our current role, like I can see big picture. That's just kind of how the Lord geared me. And you, my dear, are very detailed. Like you see the details, not only here's the big picture, you know how to get there.
Right.
So at one time, it would be a little bit frustrating to hear these details of how to get to the big picture. Yet you're like, why would you be frustrated? Because if you don't have these, you aren't going there. So, so it's like,
Oh, I'm so glad you realized that.
I've
You've grown
grown
so
tremendously in my marriage. But I think it's just, making that room and that allowance in that too. So
Yeah. we're just coming off of summer, and we had a number of times to put this into practice when our family would go to the beach.
Beach day. When I hear beach day, I'm like, throw the kids in. We'll get a smoothie on the way out, and let's just go get the sun.
Right. And then when I think of the beach day, I'm like, okay, we've got lists of stuff that we actually need in order to have the beach day. Food being huge, and swimsuits, just the things. So we've had to learn in our marriage that, Joel may be like, he can see the vision of fun, but there are things needed in order to have the fun.
Right.
And then I have to be okay with, what, really doesn't matter if we have every single floaty in every single color the kids want. Just sometimes you gotta throw it in and go.
Who cares? Exactly.
So there's give on both sides.
There is give on both sides. Right. And I think we only had one little disagreement over this beach days.
Yep.
And it was just along those lines, seeing differently.
Yep.
I'm still right.
Moving
along. Okay.
I think another difference in our marriage is like how we feel or how we express or relate to each other during times of conflict. You being more on the feeling and emotional side,
Now,
right?
we got to just clearly identify what that means, because
he's not crying.
I'm not.
But you
What do you mean?
feel things so deeply.
I feel things deeply, whereas then yourself, you are very logical.
Right. And then we've seen in times of conflict, I get even more logical, you get even more passionate feeler.
I like that word passionate. Let's not. I just don't like that.
You want to take out the word feeling? And
Well, it
passion in?
puts. I'm not trying to. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with having the feelings, and it's not like I'm just pouting in a corner. I guess I want to paint the proper picture of what it looks like.
Do paint.
Do paint. I'm trying to. I don't know how to back up and kind
You're
of
painting yourself into a corner.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's what I'm doing. But no, that's exactly right. So when there's a bit of a conflict, like I remember even saying this to you a few times, like having an argument or a fight against you sucks because I can never win. Jaime is very logical, so you remember things like to a T.
I remember every
and it's like,
part
holy
of the
man,
argument.
I don't
know.
remember that, but I feel this way.
Right.
Like, so it just, there's
So
a difference.
we've really learned to see those differences. So I have to stop the logic. Stop with getting more logical to explain why the fight happened.
That sounded a little bit, I don't know, sarcastic. A little bit.
No, I'm not trying
okay.
to be sarcastic. I'm just saying we've learned that as a difference,
Totally.
right? That I need to stop being as logical and see
Right.
from your feeling side. And then hopefully from your feeling side, you can see logic.
Right.
Are you okay to talk about a feeling?
That's all good. That's all good. Oh my goodness.
Well, I have a scripture about who I want to be as a wife, or who I'm learning or growing into being. And this is Ephesians 5:33, and I've really learned this again when we're talking about learning and respecting differences. As a wife, one thing that's helped me is asking you how you think. Tell me, like,
Yep.
as a man, and we're going to talk about sex in a few minutes, but I've asked you, like, tell me what it's like to be a guy.
Yeah.
Tell me what it's like to be sight driven and to have this specific sex drive, right? Like
Right.
I've asked you that, but also in non-sex related things, in like, tell me what it's like. What are your needs as a man? And you've identified one of the biggest ones that you need from me is respect.
Right.
And so as a wife, I've been learning, like, I just assume he knows I respect him. I love and adore this man more than anything on earth. So I assume a lot of times that you know that I respect you, but the tone I'm using can sound disrespectful or condescending.
Right.
And so I love this scripture in Ephesians 5:33 in the Amplified. It says, "Let the wife see that she respects and reverences her husband." And then it describes what that means here, that she notices him, regards him, honors him, prefers him, venerates and esteems him, that she defers to him, praises him, loves and admires him exceedingly. And so I know that that is one of the things that I've noticed, like different, like acknowledging differences. You need that respect, and I need to actually voice that and
Right.
and have my my words and my actions towards you line up with actually what's in my heart. In my
Yep.
heart, I'm respecting
Right.
you, but I
Yep.
have to watch what's coming out.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I hear you.
Now, do you have something you want to say in terms of what you're working on to be the best spouse?
Well,
I'm just
what did
kidding.
you tell me to say again? No, I'm just kidding. No, of course. Again, like this is what we're even calling this is developing strengths in our marriage. So of
Yeah.
course, for me, like I know again we can look to the Word of God being the pure word of what God would say, and as my role as a husband to you is to love you just like Jesus loves the church. And it actually says that he died for her. So for me, it's like there are going to be some things, meaning like that you may have some needs or there's some things that you desire that it's actually going to cost me whatever I want to be doing. Like if it's all of a sudden she wants to talk, put down your phone or turn the game off, pause it for a sec and actually hear her out. Because really what I'm doing is by showing this love towards her, like the Bible even says, you're actually doing yourself a favor as well because we're one.
Yeah.
So when I want to show that love, so for me, it's to not always notice you, but this reverence, but to love you just as Christ loves the church. And that, I don't want to sound that churchy or Christian cliche, but my job is to love you even if it's going to hurt me, period. So that's where I'm
good.
going into.
Thank you.
Yeah, you deserve it.
I love that.
Yeah.
You're amazing.
You're great.
Well,
Kiss?
let's talk about sex.
Oh,
shall
okay.
we?
Speaking of, yeah. So, sex is good. God created sex. You've probably heard that. You know that. Sex is designed, of course, again, for the purpose of marriage. That's where God intended for it to be, with the purpose of, obviously, well, creating children, but also for enjoyment, that we're supposed to enjoy each other in it.
Yeah.
And so I enjoy it. I have a great time with it.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I think when we're talking, we're figuring out what to share from our perspective. I would say in our marriage, one thing that's really worked and that I would encourage you with is, first of all, start there, finding out sex is good and it was created to be used within marriage, and it's not something to be ashamed of, or it's not something to be, done out of religious duty.
Yeah, oh, totally.
Like, this is something for enjoyment and for intimacy.
Yep.
And so I say what's really worked the best in our marriage, in our sex life, has been finding out what your spouse needs. And in terms of that, I'm saying, like, we've talked a lot about your statement is sex begins in the kitchen,
Yeah.
which is not that sex happens in the kitchen
Right.
necessarily.
As it begins meaning conversation, it means in like almost, I don't know how to properly say this, but it's
In the beginning of the day,
beginning of the
you're-
day, working with you right off the bat, rather than just like waking up, hey, see you later, wife, I'm off to work, talk to you later. And then as soon as you get home that night, you're just thinking, it's on. Like, that would be great, but that's not how this works. There's relationship
Right.
on your side. There's the
Yeah.
emotional connection. There's this, like, you want to be wanted.
Right. And that, like, us learning that
Some of the
that
differences.
myself as a woman, I feel like I need the relational side
Yep.
and the emotional connection. And we've learned in this phase of life to even be able to express that, to say, hey, we haven't really connected today. Do you think we could spend some time
Yep.
chatting first? I know that we
Let's-
go so much deeper than that, but we have identified, like, hey, let's connect if
Right.
if it's been a busy day.
Yep.
So that's for sure.
That's absolutely.
And then one other thing that you've noticed about me is that I need touch. Like, I need to be held
Right.
and cuddled in a non-sexual way, like
Right.
just held and embraced
Yep.
and feel secure.
Just to feel secure.
And then under your needs, you identified
My needs was Jamie be present.
that's physically and mentally.
Physically and mentally, just be there.
Yeah. Not be making a to-do list in my head
No.
or something like that.
Nothing like that. Just be present.
Yeah.
Because God gave it to us. It's a gift that He gave us.
Absolutely.
And so we're supposed to enjoy it.
Yeah. And so if that is not an area that is fulfilling in your life right now, I mean, there are times, especially after children and we're exhausted and different stuff like that, like it's something that we've learned to talk about, and
Yeah.
that wasn't easy at the beginning. Like you get married, all of a sudden it's, hey, now you go from you're not supposed to be having sex to you're supposed to be having sex.
Yeah.
And there's a transition that happens, right? And
Yep.
you have to actually learn. And I would say that sex has been a gift to us in terms of intimacy.
Right.
Right? That we feel closely connected to each other through that. And when we've gone through periods where it's not as often, we sense that kind
Right.
of disconnect.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, no, that's very true. And one other thing that I want to just mention that you had just touched on, like sometimes thinking that we have to do it out of religious duty. Can we just nip that for a sec? Because that's a horrible thought, and that actually it's not enjoyable. It's not
Yeah.
fun. It just, it becomes out of a religious obligation. Like that just takes all of the joy out of what God gave us that's supposed to be fun and enjoyment. And now you're putting it into this box where it's like, okay, I have to check off this religious box
Right.
because I got to do this. And if I don't do this, I'm not fulfilling my role. Is there anything that you could add to that at all? Like that, just to nip that kind of that.
I think maybe we didn't we weren't deeply rooted in that, but one thing that helped us was respecting each other's sex drive.
Yeah.
Really, learning to meet in the middle.
Right.
Almost.
Yeah.
Right. Like learning, in our case, like men tend to have a higher sex
Yep.
drive, and there's seasons where I have had a lower sex drive than you, and you've said, "Gosh, I wish that God had created it differently." And we're
Right.
like, "Well, then people wouldn't get anything done." in
Yeah,
life,
exactly. They'd be having
right?
sex all the time. No,
Yeah.
that's true.
And
No,
so
right.
we've learned how to respect each other's season and
Yeah.
needs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And communicate.
And communicate.
But yeah,
And
taking
just
it
talk.
out of that religious duty realm and bringing it into fun and intimacy.
And even like just being able to talk about it. I think that's part of what we talked about in our last
Yeah.
session, just the vulnerability side, is just being able to express like, hey,
Yeah.
this is great. This is awesome. This isn't so great when you're doing checklists or you're like, that's not fun.
Yeah.
So like just be able to have that conversation and just to be open and raw with each other is great. There's nothing
Yes.
wrong with that.
Do you know what I love about that is that if you have the conversation, if you keep it open versus just building up resentment.
Exactly.
Right?
And this you never, or how come we only do, like you can
Yeah.
get into this criticizing, and that's not healthy either. It's just this, hey, this is where I'm at, and what do you think?
Absolutely.
So,
Love it.
Love it.
Great. Well, this is really one of our first times talking on camera about sex.
It
So
is.
hopefully we'll be able to do more of that in the future. But in all honesty, we're so
Yeah.
glad that you tune in to Impact TV. We believe that God is doing something through these sessions. And our heart is that you have got something you can apply to your
Yep.
own marriage
You
in
bet.
this season or in your next.
Absolutely. You bet. We'll see you next time.